Hi guys, so I hadn't expected to be on the other side of West Streeting on this issue, but it seems that I am. Now, the Health Secretary was asked about political donations and freebies by a reporter from Newsnight, and instead of making excuses, he actually welcomed an injection of cash into politics. Streeting dismissed an idea that I and others have presented, that of publicly funded political parties. West says the money would be better spent on the NHS, but this is a false dichotomy and he knows that. Have a listen.
I'm really proud of people who want to contribute not just their time and volunteering, but their money to our politics. It is a noble pursuit, just like giving to charity, and we don't recognise that enough. The alternative is we ask taxpayers to fund our politics. I think they'd rather their taxes went into the NHS and our schools or stayed in their own pockets.
It's going to a Taylor Swift concert, a noble cause.
I'm sure Keir will shake it off. But let me say, Nick, I'm absolutely delighted in the BBC's newfound conviction that no one should be paid more than the Prime Minister, that they shouldn't give or receive hospitality, and will judge the performance on the social media mentions.
He's a wonderful individual, isn't he? Now, okay, let me lay out some of the reasons why I would support, and others should support, publicly funded political parties. The first obvious example is it would reduce corruption. Now, corruption will never be eliminated, but it would drastically reduce corruption because instead of relying on donors, political parties would receive funding from the state. Now, I'll get into that a little bit later, but at the moment, the Conservatives have received huge amounts of money from private individuals. They've received a huge amount of money in the last campaign from one individual in particular. And of course, as a party, what do? They work not for their voters, but they work for their donors. So if you were to eliminate donations to political parties and have them publicly funded, there would be no reason for donors to give money. There would be no reason for media barons or multimillionaires to give money to the Conservative Party, for example. But also when it comes to the Labour Party, they rely mainly on donations from, for example, the trade unions. Now, this would be eliminated as well. They would receive public cash in order to run their campaigns. Now, there are other advantages to having publicly funded political parties. For example, it would level the playing field. So it would help smaller parties who don't have the massive donors to help fund campaigns. As I said, the last campaign for the Conservatives was funded basically by one guy. Campaigns would be more voter-centred instead of talking about tax cuts and deregulation, which benefits the richest in society, of course. Parties would have to win over voters with policies that actually benefit them for a change. It would result in better transparency. We would know exactly how much money political parties have, how they spend it, and what they're spending it on. This would improve trust in politics and politicians, which is, of course, extremely scarce at the moment. And it would improve democracy as more voices and perspectives would be given an airing. Again, parties would be more voter-centred instead of relying on massive donations from individuals. It would require new legislation, of course. It would require a shift in thinking, and it would cost the taxpayer money. There's no getting away from that. If you want to eliminate corruption, if you want to reduce corruption, it's going to be expensive. But the alternative is much more expensive. So while West Streeting can say that the public would prefer the money to go to the NHS, in reality, we're not talking about taking money from the NHS to fund political parties. It would mean that political parties are more answerable to voters instead of being answerable to their donors. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.